I wasn't supposed to be on Amish land that morning. I had only meant to take a shortcut across the fields, the autumn mist low over the grass, the air thick with the smell of hay and wood smoke. But then I heard the gentle creak of a barn door and saw him, Isaac, tall, broad-shouldered, with sandy hair tucked beneath a simple black hat. He looked like he'd stepped out of another century. Quiet eyes, steady hands, and a calmness that settled over everything around him. He wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice soft, the kind of soft that made you listen more closely. I nodded. "Sorry, I didn't mean to trespass." He studied me for a moment, then smiled. A small, reserved smile, but warm enough to melt the fog. "You can come in the barn. There's coffee brewing. My mother won't see." I don't know what came over me, but I followed him. Inside the barn, sunlight filtered through the old wooden slats, painting lines of gold across the hay. The barn smelled like earth and warmth, and Isaac moved through it like he belonged to every inch of it. As he handed me a tin cup of coffee, our fingers brushed. He froze. I froze. There was something in his eyes, something he'd probably spent years trying to bury, something he wasn't allowed to feel. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered, but he didn't step away. "And yet you let me in," I whispered back. He swallowed hard. "That's the sin." But he didn't move. His breathing changed, shallow and nervous, like he was fighting a battle inside himself. For a long moment, the barn was silent except for the distant sound of animals outside and our own hearts beating far too loudly. "I've never," he started, then stopped. "We're taught to be simple, to be good. But when I saw you," he looked at me again, really looked. Something broke open. I felt it too, this strange pull, this undeniable warmth, this fragile tension between us. I took one small step closer. "If it's wrong," I whispered, "why does it feel so honest?" His breath trembled. "My whole life, I've never wanted something I wasn't allowed." He paused, his voice barely a breath. "Until now." The moment felt like standing on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. No touching, no explicit gestures. Just two people standing in a barn, hearts beating in a rhythm that felt like a confession. And then, he stepped closer. Close enough that the heat of him pressed against the cold morning air. Close enough that I could feel the fear and longing tangled inside him. He raised a hand, hesitant, trembling, and touched my cheek. Not a sinful act, not really. But to him it was everything. "I shouldn't," he murmured. But he didn't stop. And in that quiet barn, surrounded by the life he'd always known, he let himself feel something forbidden, something human, something tender. No one saw, no one heard. But for him it was the deepest sin of all, letting himself fall for me. I didn't sleep that night. Even hours after leaving the barn and walking back through the fog-covered fields to the small cottage where I was staying, I could still feel Isaac's hand on my cheek, the quiet tremble in his breath, the way he had looked at me as though he was seeing a part of himself for the first time. A forbidden part. For him, that single touch had been a storm. For me, it had been an awakening. But the next morning, when I returned to the Amish settlement under the excuse of asking for directions again, the air felt different. The barn stood in the same place, weathered and sun-warmed, but the world around it buzzed with an unfamiliar tension. I found him outside, chopping wood. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing strong forearms tanned from work. But his movements were rigid, almost anxious. Every chop of the axe felt like a punishment he was giving himself. When he noticed me, he froze mid-swing. His chest rose sharply. His eyes widened. Then immediately he looked away, as if one glance might shatter what little resolve he had left. "Isaac," I said softly. He didn't turn. "Why did you come back?" His voice wasn't angry. It was scared. "I thought we needed to talk." He whispered. "We do. But not here." He set the axe aside and wiped his hands on his trousers, but he still wouldn't meet my eyes. Without another word, he walked towards the far side of the barn, where a narrow path cut through a line of trees. I followed him into the shade. He stopped only when we were hidden from sight, beneath a cluster of tall maples. Their leaves rustled gently above us, like nature itself was trying to soften the moment. He finally looked at me, and I realized then that he hadn't slept either. His eyes were tired, red around the edges, filled with a mixture of longing and fear. "What happened yesterday," he said slowly, "should never have happened." I expected the sting of rejection. Instead, his voice broke. "I've spent my whole life following rules. My family, my community, they live by the same way of being. But when I touched you," he looked down at his shaking hands. "It felt too real to ignore." I stepped closer. "Then don't ignore it." His jaw clenched. "You don't understand what I risk. Explain it to me." He hesitated, then exhaled. "In my world, everything has order, simplicity, obedience. There is a path you stay on. You marry, you raise a family, you keep the faith. There is no space for this." He gestured between us. "For feelings like these." "But you still feel them," I whispered. That hit him. He closed his eyes, as if the truth hurt more than anything else. "When I touched your face in the barn, it was like my heart stepped out of line, and I felt something warm, something I've never felt for anyone." My chest tightened at the honesty in his voice. "But that's a sin here," he continued. "Even if it's gentle, even if it's true." He opened his eyes again, and they glistened with the weight of decisions he'd never been allowed to make. "I'm scared of what this means. I'm scared of wanting more. I'm scared of being seen." I took a slow step closer, careful, respectful. "You don't have to be scared of me." His breath hitched, but he didn't pull away. "You shouldn't care for someone like me," he whispered. "I'm bound to a life I didn't choose." "Everyone deserves to choose," I said softly. "Even you." He stared at me then, really stared, like he was letting himself believe something he'd never dared imagine. But then a sound broke through the moment. Footsteps on the path. He stiffened immediately, fear shooting through his body. Without thinking, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me behind him, pressing me against the trunk of a tree, shielding me from sight. A middle-aged Amish man passed by, humming as he walked. Isaac didn't breathe until the footsteps faded. Only then did he turn back to me, his hand still gripping mine. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "This is what I mean. If anyone sees us together like this, even talking away from others, they'll start to wonder." "About what?" I asked gently. His fingers tightened. "About the truth I don't know how to hide anymore." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden flecks, landing across his face, revealing just how fragile he was beneath the quiet strength. His chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, and his eyes flicked between mine as if searching for courage. "I shouldn't want you here," he said, "but I'm relieved that you came. That makes two of us." Finally, his shoulders softened a little. But then he asked something that caught me completely off guard. "Can you come tonight?" His voice was barely a breath. "After sundown. Meet me in the barn." I felt my heart kick. "Are you sure?" "No," he whispered. "But I still want to." The honesty of it hit me harder than anything else. I could see the conflict ripping him apart. I could see the guilt. I could see the longing. And beneath it all, I could see hope. "Tonight," I said quietly. He nodded once, but the fear didn't disappear. If anything, it deepened. His hands trembled slightly as he pushed them into his pockets, trying to appear calm. "You must leave now," he said, glancing towards the path. "If people see us together too much, rumors will start." I nodded. He was right, but before I could turn away, his voice stopped me. "Wait." I turned back. Isaac stepped forward, not touching me, not daring to, but standing close enough that I felt his warmth. His voice cracked as he said, "I don't know what will happen tonight, but I know I can't face it unless you come." I lifted a hand, hesitated, then let my fingers brush his sleeve. The barest touch, but enough that he inhaled sharply through his nose. "I'll be there," I promised. His eyes closed in relief, and then, forcing himself to break the moment before someone saw more than they should, He stepped back, turned away, and walked towards the settlement, leaving me with one truth pulsing through my chest. Tonight would change everything. For both of us. Night fell slowly over the settlement, the sky shifting from amber to indigo as lanterns flickered to life one by one across the Amish homes. By the time the last traces of sunlight disappeared behind the hills, my heartbeat had already quickened with every minute that passed. Isaac had asked me to come after sundown, but he had asked with fear in his voice, and hope hidden beneath it. Both emotions followed me like shadows as I approached the barn. The fields were quiet, the air cold enough that my breath rose in pale swirls. The barn sat at the edge of the settlement, dark but not silent. The soft shuffle of a horse inside, the creak of old wood in the wind, the distant chirping of crickets. The door wasn't locked. It never was. But tonight, pushing it open felt like crossing a line I couldn't step back over. Inside, the lantern hanging from a beam cast a warm, golden circle of light across the hay. And in that circle, standing with his hands clasped tightly behind his back as if trying to contain himself, was Isaac. He turned the moment he heard the door click shut. His expression was unreadable at first. Relief, fear, anticipation. They flickered over his face like shadows stirred by candlelight. "You came," he whispered. "You asked me to." His eyes lowered, like the honesty of it struck something tender in him. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost hoped you wouldn't." He swallowed. "And I hoped you would more than anything." I stepped closer but slowly, giving him space to breathe. "Are you all right?" He let out a shaky exhale. "No." His voice cracked, and the sound cut through me. "I've been shaking since sunset, thinking of last night, of what I felt, of what I might feel again. I'm terrified." "You don't have to be." He looked up then, and there was something new in his eyes, raw vulnerability. "You don't know how dangerous this is for me," he murmured. "If I lose control, if someone finds out, I could lose my home, my family, everything I've ever known." I nodded slowly. "And yet you still asked me to meet you here. That's the part I'm frightened of most." The barn seemed to breathe with him. Every nervous rise and fall of his chest, every tremor in his fingers, every second he fought himself and still couldn't step away. He was a man breaking rules he'd lived by his whole life. And he was breaking them for me. I moved closer, not touching, just closing the distance enough that I could see the faint freckles on his cheek, the way the lantern glow softened the sharp lines of his jaw. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked quietly. He licked his lips, hesitated, then finally said the words, "About what I feel for you." My heart stumbled. "I tried to pray it away today," he continued, his voice trembling. "Tried to lose myself in work, in chores, in anything that might drown it out. But the more I tried to silence it," he shook his head helplessly, "the louder it became." What became louder? He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When he opened them again, they held a fragile truth. The want. A breath escaped me. He stepped closer then. Just one step, but enough that his warmth pressed into the cold air. Enough that the space between us suddenly felt alive. "I'm not supposed to want anything outside the life laid out for me," he whispered. "But when you touched my sleeve this morning, I haven't felt anything like that in my entire life." His voice dropped to a trembling confession. "I haven't even felt that with a woman." The honesty of it made my chest ache. "And that scares you," I said. He nodded once. "More than anything. But you asked me to come here anyway." This time, the corner of his mouth lifted, just a faint, trembling smile. Because something in me wants to understand this rather than run from it." "And what do you want to understand?" He looked down at his hands. Then, with hesitance carved into every movement, he lifted them halfway between us. "Why a touch from you feels like truth, when everything I was taught says it's wrong." I raised my hand slowly, giving him room to pull back if he needed to. He didn't. Our fingers met, barely. A whisper of contact. But Isaac inhaled sharply, as if the air had been punched from his lungs. His eyes fluttered shut. His lips parted. His entire body tensed with something between fear and longing. "Isaac," I murmured. His voice shook. "That shouldn't feel so powerful. But it does." He opened his eyes again, and this time there was no hiding. "It feels like something I've been denying without even knowing." Our fingers stayed touching, his trembling, mine steady. The barn seemed to hum around us, as though the air itself recognized the significance of this moment. For him, this wasn't small. It wasn't simple. This was a step out of the only world he'd ever known. He drew a shaky breath. "I've never held another man's hand," he whispered. "Not like this. Not with feeling. Do you want to?" His answer was immediate, instinctive. "Yes." And then quieter. "More than I should." I gently turned my hand, letting my fingers slide into his. He watched our hands come together like he was witnessing a sin and a prayer at the same time. His voice trembled with awe. "It feels safe." "Trust," I said softly. "That's what you're feeling." He looked at me then, fully, openly, and something shifted in his expression. It wasn't fear now. It was recognition, like he was finally seeing himself for the first time. "What happens now?" he asked. I stepped close enough that our foreheads nearly touched, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath against my cheek. "That depends on you." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't want to stop this." "Then we don't have to." "But I don't know how to be this, how to feel this." His eyes searched mine desperately. "Teach me." My hand tightened around his gently. "I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here because I care." "You do." He sounded disbelieving. "Isaac, I wouldn't be here if I didn't." Something inside him broke then, quietly, beautifully. His breath hitched, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked relieved. Not guilty, not ashamed, just relieved. He leaned forward just slightly, enough that his forehead brushed mine. The contact was featherlight, but for him it was everything. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Please don't leave tonight." His fingers tightened around mine. "I don't want to be alone with this feeling." "You're not alone," I said softly. "Not anymore." He exhaled shakily, eyes closing, as though he was letting the words settle inside him, letting himself believe them. Outside, the night deepened. Inside, the lantern flickered. And in the barn where he'd spent years hiding every unspoken truth, he finally let one of them breathe. For the first time, he wasn't running. He was choosing trust, choosing honesty, choosing me, and he didn't let go of my hand for a long, long time. The next morning arrived far too quickly. I woke with Isaac's voice still echoing in my head. "Please don't leave tonight. I don't want to be alone with this feeling." Even hours later, the warmth of his hand lingered in mine, as if the barn still held us in its breath. But when I approached the settlement again, something was different. The peaceful calm that usually hung over the Amish households felt cracked at the edges. People moved about their chores, but their eyes flicked up more often. Conversations paused when I walked by. Doors shut quicker. The quiet felt heavier. A storm was coming, one that neither of us had prepared for. I found Isaac at the water pump, pulling up a heavy bucket. His shoulders looked stiff, his movements careful. Too careful. When he lifted his head and saw me, something like fear flashed across his face. But he masked it quickly. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured under his breath, glancing around. "I thought we agreed. We agreed last night," he cut in quietly. "But today is different." He set the bucket down and wiped his palms on his trousers, his eyes flicking towards a group of older Amish men speaking near the edge of the field. "What's wrong?" I asked. He hesitated. Then he said the words that made my chest tighten. "People are talking." A breath caught in my throat. "About us." He nodded once, barely visible. "I didn't tell anyone anything," he whispered quickly. "But people notice things. They notice when a stranger visits more than once. They notice when I walk away from chores. They notice when my eyes look elsewhere." He said the last part with a tremor. "Isaac, my father asked me at breakfast if something was troubling me. He said I've been acting strange. Distracted. He swallowed. I didn't know what to say. He took a small step closer to me but didn't touch. He didn't dare. Last night was powerful. Beautiful. But it's made me careless today. I can't think straight. I softened my voice. Then talk to me. But before he could answer, his younger sister stepped out of the house carrying a basket of laundry. She glanced our way, too long, too carefully. Isaac stiffened instantly. She's been watching me all morning, he muttered. They all have. He bent down to adjust the pump handle, pretending to work, but his voice was low and shaking. I'm frightened. I crouched slightly, keeping my voice just as low. Of what? Them finding out? Or what you felt last night? His jaw clenched. Both. He wasn't trembling like last night. This was different, not emotional trembling, but fear. Raw, cold fear. Isaac, I said gently. I'm not here to ruin anything for you. I know, he breathed. I know you're not the danger. His eyes finally lifted to mine, and the truth in them hurt. The danger is me. Before I could answer, a deep voice called out from across the field. Isaac! He froze. An older man, stern-faced with a beard streaked with gray, strode towards us. His father. Isaac's breath faltered. I saw him straighten his posture, like a boy caught doing something he shouldn't. His father stopped beside him and glanced at me. One quick, heavy look that seemed to weigh every inch of me. You again, he said simply. Not rude, but far from warm. Yes, sir, I replied politely. I was passing through. You pass through often, he said, his eyes never blinking. Isaac quickly stepped in. Duh, he's only asking about directions again. His father turned his gaze to him. You said that yesterday, and the day before. Attention settled between them. Isaac lowered his head slightly in respect. I'm just trying to be helpful. His father studied him for a painfully long moment. You've been distracted, he said slowly. You've missed morning chores, and your mind is elsewhere. This is not our way. Isaac didn't move. His father continued, voice low but carrying weight. You know how rumors start. You know how easily a man's reputation can fall. My pulse spiked. He wasn't just warning Isaac. He was warning both of us. I'll finish my chores, Isaac said quietly. I promise. His father gave me one final, chillingly calm look before turning and walking away. Only when he was far enough did Isaac release a breath he'd been holding. I'm in trouble, he whispered. I stepped subtly closer. He doesn't know anything. But he suspects something, Isaac said. He's a perceptive man. They all are. Amish life is simple. When something changes, everyone notices. He dragged a shaky hand through his hair. I shouldn't have asked you to come last night. I was selfish. I'm making you part of something dangerous. You're not making me do anything, I said firmly. I'm here because I want to be. But at what cost? He whispered. If this continues, if they see us together again, I could be brought before the church, questioned, disciplined. He looked at me with eyes full of fear. I could lose everything I've ever known. And what about what you want? I asked softly. Don't you matter in this life too? He looked away. I'm not allowed to matter. His voice cracked on the last word, and the sound nearly shattered me. Before I could respond, someone else approached. The same middle-aged man who had passed us on the path the day before. He slowed as he walked by, eyes flicking between us. He didn't say a word, but suspicion radiated off him like heat. Another crack in the world around Isaac. Another warning. Isaac took 2 steps back from me instantly, as if the space might save him. I need to go, he said suddenly. I can't be seen with you again today. My chest tightened. Isaac, please, he whispered, voice desperate. If you care for me even a little, go. Before someone asks questions I can't answer. I stared at him, torn between staying and respecting his plea. But the fear in his eyes wasn't for himself. It was for me too, so I nodded. All right, I'll go. But he shook his head quickly, stepping closer in a fragile moment of rebellion. No, wait. He glanced over his shoulder, making sure no one was watching. Then, so subtly only I could see, he let his fingers brush the back of my hand. Just for a second, just enough to feel the warmth. A secret, a risk, a truth. His voice shook as he whispered, "I'm not pushing you away. I'm protecting what we had last night." I swallowed hard. "And what do we have?" He lifted his eyes to mine. "Regret, fear, longing. They all flickered there. A feeling I can't hide," he whispered. Then he stepped back, closing himself off as an Amish man passed near us. Without another word, he picked up the water bucket and walked away, shoulders stiff, head down, trying to look normal, obedient, unchanged. But I could see it. He wasn't unchanged. Neither of us were. And as I stood there watching him disappear into the day's chores, I realized something with painful clarity. This wasn't just about a forbidden feeling anymore. This was about a man fighting a whole world he had never questioned until now. And the world was starting to fight back. 2 days passed before Isaac came to find me. 2 long, aching days where I walked the fields alone, waiting for a glimpse of him, hoping he would steal away for even a moment. But every time I neared the settlement, I felt the eyes on me. Cautious, suspicious, watchful. It was clear now. The rumor had grown teeth. So I kept my distance, even though every part of me wanted to return to that barn and hold on to the memory of his trembling hand in mine. On the 3rd evening, as I sat by the fence that bordered the Amish land, I heard footsteps approach softly through the tall grass. I turned, heart already rising into my throat. Isaac stood there, breathless as if he'd run the whole way. His hat was gone, his hair ruffled by the wind, his cheeks flushed pink. But it was his eyes that stopped me, swollen, tired, and full of something breaking. "You shouldn't be here this late," I said gently. He shook his head. "I had to see you." He glanced back toward the settlement, making sure no one had followed, then stepped closer. "They confronted me." My chest tightened. "Who?" "The ministers. And my father." His voice trembled. "They asked why I'd been distracted. Why I'd been disappearing. Why a stranger visits our land so often." I swallowed. "What did you tell them?" "That I didn't know you. That I didn't feel anything unusual." His jaw tightened painfully, and it felt like lying for the first time in my life. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "They told me to stay away from you. That your presence is unsettling the community. That I'm being tempted." His breath shook on that last word. "Isaac, I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I never wanted to cause you pain." "You didn't." He met my eyes strongly now, like a man making a confession. "You made me feel alive." A soft wind rustled the grass between us. "What happens now?" I asked. "That's what I came to tell you." He reached into his coat and pulled out something small. A folded piece of parchment, old and creased. "This is my permission to join Rumspringa." I blinked. "Your time to explore the outside world." He nodded. It's meant to be for young men who want to see the modern world before committing to the church." I never planned to go. I thought my life was already decided. He looked at me with heartbreak and determination intertwined. "But now, they're forcing me to decide early. Stay and deny everything I've felt." His voice cracked softly. "Or go." I felt my heart drop. "And if you go?" I whispered. "If I go, I leave everything behind. My home, my family, my community. I may never be welcomed back." He took another step toward me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him in the cool night air. "And if I stay," he whispered, "I lose you." The world seemed to fall silent around us. Just the wind, the soft rustle of the grass, our breaths mingling in the space between us. "I don't want to lose my family," he said, voice trembling. "They're my whole life. The people who raised me, loved me, guided me." "I know. But I also don't want to lose the way you make me feel. Not just the touch, the truth of it." His eyes glassed over and he swallowed hard. "You're the first person I've ever really looked at. The first person who made me question who I am." in a way that feels honest. He reached out then, hesitant, cautious, and brushed his fingers over mine. Even that tiny contact made him exhale shakily. "I don't know how to be both things," he whispered. "A good son to them, and true to myself." I held his gaze. "You don't have to choose me. Choose what lets you breathe." "What if that's you?" His voice broke on the last word. A painful lump formed in my throat. "Isaac, leaving your whole world behind for me, that's too heavy. You'd resent me. Or worse, you'd suffer." "I'm suffering now," he whispered fiercely. "Every moment I pretend I don't feel anything for you, I feel like I'm tearing pieces out of myself." He stepped closer, no hesitation this time, and pressed his forehead against mine. The contact was tender, trembling, desperate. "I want you," he whispered. "Not in a sinful way, in a true way, the kind of want that makes me feel human, seen." I closed my eyes, swallowing the ache rising inside me. "I want you too," I said softly. His breath caught. "But what I want even more is for you to be safe, to have peace. Can you have that if you leave them?" His silence answered for him. He couldn't. Not yet. Not without breaking. Finally, he pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. "My father said something today," Isaac murmured. "He said God gives us each a path, and sometimes the hardest thing is staying on it." "And what do you think?" I asked. He gave a fragile smile, the saddest one I'd ever seen. "I think sometimes the hardest thing is walking away from what you want." His hand tightened around mine, then slowly slid away. My chest felt like it was collapsing. "So you're staying?" I whispered. He nodded once, sharply, as if forcing himself. "I have to. Not because they ordered it, but because I'm not strong enough yet. I need time to understand what this feeling is, to understand myself." Tears filled his eyes, not falling, but shining. "But don't think I'm turning away from you," he said. "I'm choosing the path I can walk right now." "And us," I murmured. He stepped closer one last time, brushing a trembling hand along my jaw, the boldest touch he'd ever allowed himself. "Us," he whispered, "is not over, just waiting." He withdrew his hand slowly, as if pulling himself away physically hurt him. "I can't promise I'll leave my world for you," he said honestly. "But I can promise this. Last night wasn't confusion. It wasn't temptation. It was me, the truest me I've ever felt." My breath fogged lightly between us. "Will I see you again?" I asked. He gave a small, broken smile. "Not for a while, but maybe one day when I'm ready, when it's safe, when I can look at you without fear following me like a shadow." He took a step back, then another. The distance widening between us felt like something tearing. "I'll think of you every time I walk past that barn," he whispered. Of the night, I finally let myself feel like a living man. The last rays of dusk faded behind him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "but thank you for touching a part of me no one ever has." He turned then, walking back toward the settlement, toward duty, family, safety, and the life he'd always known. I watched him go until the dark swallowed him completely, and though my heart ached with the weight of goodbye, there was a fragile thread of hope woven through the pain. Because he hadn't chosen against me. He had chosen time. Time to become the man who might one day walk back through the fields, cross the fence, and stand before me without trembling. A man ready to love fully, freely. A man who wouldn't have to choose between the world he was born into and the truth he found in me. One day, maybe, but for now, the barn kept our secret. The night kept our promise. And the wind carried the soft echo of his final words. Us is not over. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. Red heart. And don't forget to subscribe for more emotional gay romance stories every week. Question for you. If you were in his place, would you choose love or your community? Tell me your answer in the comments. I read every one.